Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thank you for joining our first Foresight Friday at NIOSH of January of 2022. The purpose of this webinar series is to promote interest and capacity in the application of strategic foresight for occupational safety and health. My name is Jessica Streit, and I serve as Deputy Director of the Office of Research Integration at the U.S. National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, or NIOSH. I will be your moderator for today's session, where we have an exciting opportunity to hear about 4 plausible futures for occupational safety and health. It is my pleasure to start our session for today by introducing our featured speaker, Dr. Sarah Felknor. Sarah is Associate Director for Research Integration at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, where she leads the strategic alignment and collaboration among occupational safety and health research communities. She established the NIOSH Office of Research Integration in 2019 to connect research communities and optimize impact by leveraging innovation and collaboration to advance the NIOSH mission. She also leads the newly launched NIOSH Strategic Foresight Unit to connect research communities to strategic foresight and to provide an organizational home for foresight activities. Sarah holds a professional certificate in strategic foresight from the University of Houston, a Doctor of Public Health degree from the University of Texas School of Public Health, a Master of Science degree in Organization Development from American University in Washington, D.C., and Bachelor of Arts degrees in Political Science and Spanish from Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts. Today, Sarah will present findings from the first ever NIOSH Strategic Foresight Project. This project, which concluded in September 2021, envisions 4 plausible futures and their implications for occupational safety and health. And at this time, it is my pleasure to invite Sarah to our virtual podium. Sarah, thank you for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jessica. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'm going to save on bandwidth during the presentation and close my video, but I'll be back at the end of the presentation. So it is a real pleasure for me to present the findings of our first strategic foresight project at NIOSH, titled 4 Futures for Occupational Safety and Health. The NIOSH Foresight Project is a signature product of the recently established Strategic Foresight Unit in the NIOSH Office of Research Integration. And this work was made possible by a dedicated team of individuals across NIOSH representing 10 of our divisions, laboratories, and offices. And it is their work that I have the privilege of presenting today. I'd also like to acknowledge the contributions of Dr. Andy Hines and the University of Houston Foresight Program. They provided foundational training in foresight methods and approach and consultation throughout the Foresight Project. The Institute for the Future provided additional training and tools in approaches to foresight. And I'd also like to acknowledge Jessica Streit and Nicole Edwards from the Office of Research Integration for their substantial contributions to this project and their continuing work in strategic foresight. Today, I'm going to briefly describe the background and objectives of our project, the methods and approach we used, and I'll provide a summary of the inputs we derived from our research that culminated in the 4 futures. And then finally, I'll spend some time discussing the implications all of this has for the future of occupational safety and health. First, for some background on how we came to even consider strategic foresight at NIOSH. The art of futuring has long been championed by the NIOSH director, Dr. John Howard. Dr. Howard's portfolio of peer-reviewed literature includes many different scenarios that consider how the future of work might be different and how occupational safety and health needs to prepare for that change. In 2019, NIOSH established the Future of Work Initiative as a collective effort of transdisciplinary research and communication to identify new solutions, practical approaches, and partnership opportunities to address the future of work for the nation. And as Jessica mentioned, in 2021, NIOSH established the Strategic Foresight Unit in the Office of Research Integration to help connect research communities to strategic foresight practice and also develop our institutional capacity in foresight at NIOSH. So it is against this background and in this context that the first Foresight Project was developed. So let's start with some definitions. Strategic foresight is an action-oriented planning discipline that is grounded in future studies and strategic management. It creates well-informed future scenarios that help organizations better prepare for potential threats or take advantage of new opportunities. Scenario planning, the most common tool of strategic foresight, develops stories or scenarios of plausible futures that can help an organization test its current strategy, develop breakthrough innovations, or create transformative change. The use of strategic foresight in the United States dates back to World War II and the work of systems thinker and strategist Herman Kahn from the Rand Corporation, who used scenario planning to consider potential outcomes of nuclear conflict. The successful scenario planning tool used by the military eventually attracted the interest of the corporate sector, and foresight expanded its reach. A notable example of the early use of strategic foresight is Royal Dutch Shell's scenario planning that anticipated the Arab oil embargo and enabled Shell to prepare for and improve their competitive position in the industry. More recently, foresight has gained traction in the government space, and now multiple agencies in the United States, including the Office of Personnel Management, Centers for Disease Control, Department of Defense, US Coast Guard, just to name a few, apply foresight methods to their programs and activities. A key insight about scenario planning is that the future is best understood from multiple perspectives. And foresight does not predict the future, but it can help us avoid surprise. The objectives of this project were to consider how the future will impact occupational safety and health and what that would mean for research and service activities. We designed a project that engaged a multidisciplinary team of subject matter experts at NIOSH to promote our institutional capacity in applied foresight and also to test the utility of strategic foresight as a tool for planning and thinking about the future. And now on to our methods and approach. We adapted the internationally recognized scenario-based Foresight framework developed by the University of Houston to consider alternative futures for occupational safety and health. The U of H model provides a stepwise sequence of activities that develop 4 plausible futures based on research inputs and considers the strategic implications of each scenario. Our multidisciplinary foresight team met weekly in different configurations of 4 to 6 groups, depending on the activity. And each phase of the activity was reviewed by subject matter experts at the University of Houston for both fidelity to foresight methods and also plausibility of outputs. The project took 7 months, starting in February and wrapped up at the end of September 2021. This is the Foresight framework for occupational safety and health that was modified from the Hines and Bishop framework used by the University of Houston. For each sequential stage, we've identified the outputs that are then used as inputs into the next stage. We first presented this framework for occupational safety and health in October 2021, based on the work of Streit et al. And it's important to note that while the framework is presented as a sequential model, the process is not entirely linear. During each stage, we considered the outputs to determine if additional work was needed in the previous stage before moving on, creating a sequence much like a feedback loop in a logic model. This process provided a solid foundation for the work of next stages. Our focus today is going to be on the first 4 stages of this process, from framing the domain of interest through visioning and our implications analysis. We use the 3 horizon framework created by Bill Sharp to connect the present to the future by thinking about current assumptions, emerging changes, and possible desired futures. The 3 horizons model gives us a tool for thinking about how change occurs by demonstrating that there are at least 3 qualities of the future that are visible now in the present. And these are the 3 horizons that offer insights into possible alternative futures. In this framework, the y-axis represents the degree of strategic fit the dominant scenario has within the external environment. and the x-axis is time. Kate Rayworth provides this great definition of the three horizons. Horizon 1 is business as usual. It's the dominant way of doing things today. But there's something about this current paradigm that suggests it's not a good strategic fit for the future, and over time, H1 will decline. H3 is the emerging future. It's the future we want to see. And the seeds of that future are visible and present today in what we call weak signals. In this future, the weak signals become the dominant way of doing things, essentially replacing and improving upon the old H1. Horizon 2 is a very interesting horizon. It's a period of disruptive innovation. And disruptions can take many forms, such as new technology that revolutionizes the way we do business. Think of the disruptions caused by the smartphone that now everyone has in their pocket today. Disruptions can also lead to collapse when old systems no longer meet the strategic fit required to sustain or grow an enterprise. Think of how ride-sharing services moved into the public transportation sector and really upended the business as usual taxi cab industry. And so with our Foresight framework for occupational safety and health and the three horizon model in hand, we set about to define our domain and build out our strategic project to look at the future of occupational safety and health. Our first task was to frame the domain to answer the key strategic question, how will the future impact NIOSH's research and service activities? To answer that question, we defined the future of OSH as our main domain or central topic of interest, and our client, if you will, for this project was NIOSH. We limited our geographic scope to the United States, and we defined our three time horizons to coincide with the planning cycles related to the decades of the National Occupational Research Agenda, or NORA, which has been in place since 1996. And remember, the time horizons were defined in early 2021 when the project began. This is the domain map that we developed to identify the key topics that we considered for the project based on our strategic question, the interests of the client, and the time horizons. The core topic was the future of occupational safety and health, and we also identified the following subtopic, which were areas that we defined as key to our inquiry. Looking at the future of occupational safety and health, we wanted to know more about our facilities. Where are we going to do our work? Our policies, the guidance that influences how we do our work. The occupational safety and health workforce. The resources we need to do our work. And the societal, technological, economic, environmental, and political, or STEEP, factors in the environment that impact the domain, as well as the occupational safety and health activities as the type of work that we do. This domain map guided our search for strong and weak signals of change that might affect the future of OSH. Before we started our research, we developed a current assessment of the domain to identify current conditions, key interest groups, and recent history. And with the current assessment in place, we could then turn our focus to the future. Our research started with scanning for information and then organizing the scanning hits into categories of trends, unresolved issues, published plans, and projections about the future, known by the acronym TIPS. This is a great graphic from the University of Houston that shows the scanning process. Scanning is really a central feature of being a good futurist. It's a little more art than science, and it involves looking for information from a variety of sources about how things might be different in the future. Recognize that peer-reviewed literature that reports results of work that is 1 or more years old at the time of publication is already out of date. We had to learn to look for and find different sources, some might consider to be fringe sources, to look for information about how the future can be different. To find the fringe, you have to move outside the prevailing paradigm. And in futures work, strong evidence confirms the baseline. It's what we already know. So the goal of scanning is really to find the weak signals and to focus on what is different from the baseline, looking across all 3 time horizons. Our scanning teams located and coded over 240 relevant sources of information across all 3 time horizons. And these scanning hits became our scanning library for this project. The scanning hits were then synthesized and organized into almost 120 different trends, issues, plans, and projections. Trends were defined as statements about quantities of change that move incrementally in a specific direction over a period of time. Issues represent current, emerging, or potential conflicts, controversies, dilemmas, or choices that are not yet made that will influence the trajectory of the future. Plans were defined as the announced or published intentions of key interest groups to create change, and projections are publicly announced forecasts made by others that might influence the future. These tips were the main outputs from our research that informed the later stages of this project. With our research complete, we then moved to the next stage, which was to identify the key drivers of change. Drivers are derived from the thematic clusters of the scanning hits and tips that reveal developments that would likely affect or shape the future. They provide a roadmap of changes ahead. And these are the 8 key drivers that emerged from our synthesis of our scanning hits and our tips. And I have a brief definition or description of each of these drivers in the following slides. Advanced technology has dramatically increased productivity. While it allows for highly customizable work environments, it threatens to outpace the rate at which workers with obsolete skills can be retrained, or the rate at which systems can be built to cope with new hazards created by reliance on these new technologies. Climate change is encouraging companies to move towards more sustainable and efficient processes that will affect both infrastructure and work practices. These trends will likely create new hazards and risks for workers in multiple industries while impacting the way occupational safety and health activities are performed. Data security needs driven by new data collection and communication technologies has led to an increased need for cybersecurity and worker data oversight. There's a growing need to ensure personal data are secure and protected while leveraging the benefits of enhanced data connectivity to improve health and safety. The current knowledge generation paradigm will fundamentally change to address a lack of trust in government information. Federal agencies are challenged to disseminate prevention strategies that can protect and promote safety and health in the future of work. Consumers of research products will drive funding decisions and demand a broader research benefit base that uses communication formats that meet the demands of the communities they serve. Social credit is a trustworthiness algorithm by which data on social standing can be used to reward or punish behaviors of both workers and organizations. Companies that demonstrate high corporate social responsibility to promote people, planet, and profitability on equal terms will be sought after by workers. Non-standard work arrangements will be the new normal, and people engaged in or available for work will face challenges associated with new arrangements and ever-evolving hiring practices. There will be an increasing acceptance of workers with more fluid employment histories, fueled by an emphasis on skills over pedigree and company loyalty. Virtual work means that work is no longer limited to a physical location. Workplaces are now ubiquitous, as we all know, at home, on the road, in an airplane or an office, and work is defined by what you do, not where you go each day. And finally, the workforce continues to change as demographics and employment patterns shift dramatically. Education systems must develop new strategies to prepare future workers while simultaneously helping current workers upskill and reskill to meet growing talent needs. Our increasingly sedentary work and the blurring of work and personal life boundaries continue to affect workers' physical and mental health, resulting in an increased need for OSH to address all aspects of employee health and well-being. And so to craft plausible scenarios, we needed a good understanding of each of these drivers, because we then map them into the four futures framework. And each driver had a different story to tell as it played out across the different futures and time horizons. We use the four generic futures or archetypes based on the work of Jim Dater at the University of Hawaii. His research observed that narratives of the future, which can be written as stories or scenarios, can be classified into four recurring groups of images. There's continuation, where the system moves forward along its current trajectory with business as usual or status quo growth. There's collapse, where the current system falls apart under the weight of negative forces. The system degrades or fails as crisis emerges. There's new equilibrium, where the system reaches a balance among competing forces that is significantly different from the current balance. In the new equilibrium, the system adapts to growing internal or environmental limits. And finally, there's transformation, where the current system is discarded in favor of a new one, and where we see super exponential growth. The archetypes provided a framework or structure for developing our scenario stories, where we could interpret the outcome of different drivers and provide a set of elements upon which we could build the story. We use scenarios or stories from the future to share findings in a way that help humanize topics that are often discussed through data, charts, and policy briefs. Scenarios help us experience the emerging trends and drivers shaping the future and better imagine how diverse forces might interact and shape our domain of interest. This is how the four scenarios would play out across the three time horizons. Continuation is obviously in the here and now in Horizon 1. Collapse and new equilibrium would happen in the midterm future of Horizon 2. And the most transformative far-term future would appear in Horizon 3. In the second horizon, collapse and new equilibrium are not sequential. They're stacked, so to speak, suggesting that the trajectory of an organization is to move, theoretically, from continuation through to collapse or to new equilibrium, and then on to transformation. It's likely that some aspects of all scenarios exist to some degree now, but as they unfold over time, the baseline scenario begins to shrink and the transformation scenario begins to emerge. So with our four futures framework and our key drivers mapped across the futures, we then crafted our scenarios for the four futures of occupational safety and health. In the continuation future, boundaries continue to blur. Automation and virtual capabilities continue to alter how work is performed. Advances in technology introduce new hazards into the traditional work environment, while also exacerbating existing risks. And the line between work and personal life continues to blur as more work is done remotely. Data collection and machine learning methods make processes more efficient, but they're also increasingly used to monitor, measure, and evaluate workers. Non-standard work arrangements are more mainstream across industries, which complicates the management of safety and health. Economic trends, individual preferences, and competing priorities are extending the working life continuum, and workers find it challenging to keep pace with technological advances through upskilling and reskilling. The collapse scenario can be the most dystopic of the scenarios, and we described it as the perfect storm. The OSH community no longer meets worker needs and cannot adequately protect and promote worker safety and health. Businesses and workers are in survival of the fittest mode, stemming from a polarization of society that has significantly weakened public services, including occupational safety and health research. Lack of trust in government due to mis- and disinformation, fear of being monitored, and low data transparency limit opportunities for research and practice. There are insurmountable challenges for communicating scientific evidence to improve working conditions. The OSH system weakens as it splits to address concurrent demands for safe and healthy work in both virtual and physical work settings. The demand for improved technology far outpaces the supply, making virtual work unaffordable. Distrust in AI and electronic surveillance leads to communities of people living with limited use of technology. The utopia of work flexibility has not occurred, as the growing complexity of unstructured and fluid work arrangements becomes unsustainable. Automation and robotics replace mid-skilled jobs, leading to chronic underemployment and unemployment. And the result is a population with increasing mental and physical health issues. In the new equilibrium, we described a remote-controlled future. Post-pandemic, many organizations adopt a hybrid operations model. Enhanced data security facilitates remote work for most computer-based duties, and workers manage their own portable benefits portfolio as they frequently change jobs. Though employers feel pressure to demonstrate social responsibility to attract and retain top talent, the implementation of health supporting initiatives is challenged by the highly remote, highly diverse workforce. Consequently, workers find themselves primarily responsible for managing their own long-term exposures, chronic health conditions, and work-life integration. Advanced technology is embraced across industries, but energy use regulations and notable workforce skills gaps slow the rate of implementation. Reskilling and upskilling opportunities are limited as organizations focus on maximizing outputs through optimized human-machine collaboration. Amid these changes, occupational safety and health priorities and resource allocation center on developing energy-efficient data collection and monitoring techniques, evaluating the remote workability of people and jobs, and linking disparate data systems to understand worker-centric employment arrangements. And finally, in the transformation future, we described a one world health, where most work is done remotely and industry sectors evolve as goods and services are created and delivered virtually. The workforce is more distributed and flexible with multiple and global employers. Artificial intelligence and robotics combine to create unparalleled capacity, and human labor is only required for social and artisanal tasks or coordinating artificial intelligence in novel ways. The occupational safety and health paradigm expands to address worker mental health issues exacerbated by advances in technology. Data and data systems become integrated with individual workers' identities and their ability to function. Protecting worker data is as important as ensuring worker safety and health. Through technological augmentation, workers become more capable, long-lived, and less prone to malady. Workers unable to adjust to these changes depend on universal basic income. Social credit scores are a new incentive structure for occupational safety and health, and independent entities create searchable and verifiable OSH quality scores. Total worker health and total environment health are integrated into one world health, where the global workforce and the planet thrive. So with our scenarios written, we then moved on to the last phase of the project, where we considered the implications embedded in each of these scenarios. For each scenario, we performed an implications analysis to identify the key changes that would be suggested by each of these futures. We then considered the impacts these changes would likely have on the OSH system, using our domain subtopics as a guide to make sure we considered all aspects of the domain. And to make these issues more actionable, we identified the following 5 major themes that emerged across all scenarios: mental health, virtual work, OSH research, partnerships, and data security. We then mapped these themes across the 3 time horizons to get a sense of the temporal nature and relatedness of the strategic issues, and they're shown in the next slide. This analysis gave us a look into what strategic issues may need to be addressed and when. And here are some of our findings. In H1, the issues around virtual work seem to resolve as they do not show up again in H2 and H3. On the other hand, the mental health issues that exist in H1 emerge again in Horizon 3, suggesting that the new and evolving mental health issues related to work are not resolved in the baseline scenario. OSH research is a persistent issue across all 3 time horizons, and data security issues emerge in Horizon 2 and persist into Horizon 3. One of the interesting and confirming aspects of our analysis was that in Horizon 2, both the collapse and new equilibrium scenarios independently identified the same strategic issues of occupational safety and health research, data security, and partnerships. We found the clustering of these issues by time horizon to also make sense against our internal perspectives on the trends and issues anticipated in the future of occupational safety and health. These strategic issues will then help inform our next steps to identify strategic options and responses that are available to the larger occupational safety and health community to collectively pursue and prepare for the future. Our current project has provided a wealth of information about the drivers of change and the implications that are embedded in our 4 scenarios for occupational safety and health. Our next steps in this Foresight journey will move to the final stages of the framework, where we will consider the strategic options to prepare for the futures, as well as consider the role of Foresight methods and products going forward. And we will continue to monitor the future of occupational safety and health, searching for new signals of change to update information about the domain. Some additional steps at NIOSH include plans for a second Foresight project that will begin in early 2022. And we're going to test a different method to generate scenarios with input from external subject matter experts. We will continue our quarterly Foresight Friday at NIOSH webinars, and we'll launch a new external strategic Foresight webpage to connect the occupational safety and health research and practice communities to Foresight. And a longer-term goal is to develop a Foresight toolkit that can be used for occupational safety and health researchers and practitioners. Strategic Foresight teaches us that the future is not preordained and that we have the power to collectively shape our future. With a view of the preferred future, we can develop strategic actions to help us achieve it, while also being mindful of the future that we would rather avoid. We have some additional resources that will be posted soon on our external Strategic Foresight webpage if you're interested in other sources of information and inspiration. And we encourage you to seek out the many resources that are available to novice and experienced Foresight practitioners. The following references are provided for this presentation. And I'd like to again acknowledge the hard work and dedication of the NIOSH Foresight project team who made this work possible. And so in closing, I'll leave you with this thought. It's not too late to prepare for the future. A year from now, you'll wish you had started today.
Big thank you to Sarah for being here with us today, and thank you to all of our attendees. I hope that you've enjoyed the last hour that we spent together thinking about the future and what it could plausibly be and what its implications may be for the future of occupational safety and health. Before we part ways, the NIOSH Office of Research Integration asks you to take a few minutes to provide an evaluation of today's event. The link to that evaluation is available in the meeting chat and will also be emailed to all attendees. We value your feedback on the Foresight Friday at NIOSH series and look forward to receiving your input not only on today's session, but also on topics or speakers that you would like us to host in the future. If you have any questions about today's event, please contact the NIOSH Office of Research Integration at ori@cdc.gov. We hope you can join us for our next Foresight Friday at NIOSH, which will take place next quarter and is tentatively scheduled for April 8th, 2022. Please stay tuned for future communications containing the details and registration information for that event.